Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts. Last year, I made several videos on how to turn a tea bag into an art supply. Well, I have another one today because I'm going to show how to take a tea bag and turn it into a piece of cloth. It's a tea bag fabric hybrid that you can then use in your own journals and other mixed media projects. First, I'm going to show how to make it. It's very easy and inexpensive. Then I'm going to take some time and show different ways that I use this tea bag cloth in my own miniature journal making. So stay tuned for that. If you like journal arts, if you like book and paper arts, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and be sure and turn on the notifications, and you will have more of them in your life. Let's go make some paper. Before we start making, I want to let you know that I have some new free printables on my website, and they are spooky ones. 'Tis the season. These are from my personal collection. They're from an encyclopedia from 1820. But now I've made some high-res scans. They're on my site, and there's a link to that in the text box below this video. You're going to find some toads, some weirdly kind of cute skeletons, and of course, some bats. You don't have to have a printer to use these, and if you go to the link and scroll through the article, you'll find some ideas for how to use these if you don't have a printer. So, the materials that you need for this project, there's only three. You need tea bags, and I'm going to come back to those in a moment and talk about how to prepare them. You need cloth to be basically your substrate, your canvas. I collect old linens, and when they can no longer be mended, I'd like to turn them into something else, especially if that something else is a free art supply. If you don't have old linens, check your scrap box. Do you have denim? Maybe a torn dress shirt? You can also go to a thrift store or charity shop and see maybe a flea market, yard sale, and look for old pillowcases or sheets. One cotton pillowcase is going to give you a lot of tea bag fabric. I do like using a tightly woven cotton or linen if I can get it. Even better than going to the thrift store, ask a friend. If you've got 2-3 friends and you ask 2 of them, I can promise you that they have a scrap box of old fabric that they would love to see turned into something, and they're going to be happy to share. And you need paste. You can use a PVA craft glue. I tried it. I got my better results, though, using this handmade paste. And this is just made from cornstarch and water. You can also use wheat and flour and water. To find out how to make your own, it takes about 3 minutes. It's dead cheap. Check out the text box below this video, and I have a video here on YouTube just showing how to make your own cornstarch paste. Tea bags come in different shapes and sizes. This is a pretty normal tea bag. You can get round ones. This one's similar to this, but it's a little bit bigger. It's got a different weave. And these are the kind of tea bags that everybody has access to. Even if you don't drink tea, you can ask friends to collect them for you, or just go get the cheapest box in the supermarket and you've got a ton of art supplies. I like to drink loose tea. And for that, I use infusion bags. And I buy these online. It's just a do-it-yourself tea bag. I get mine on eBay. So if you don't know, if you haven't seen any in the shops, you can order some. They come in different sizes. I like the big ones to make a pot of tea, and the great thing about this is when you're done, you're going to have a lot more of this gorgeous brown paper to play with. It's big. In some countries, you can buy quart-sized tea bags for making iced tea. I live in Britain. I have never seen them here, but if you do live in the States or some other place that has the quart-sized tea bags, again, I would go get those because it's going to give you a lot more paper to play with. But use what you got. Make your tea and then fish out your tea bags. There are two schools of thought about the best way to dry your tea bag. Some say that you should empty out the tea leaves while they're wet. I find that if you let the tea bags dry with the tea leaves still inside while it's wet, those tea leaves are going to usually are going to stain the paper and make this cool, a rust-like effect. So I let my tea bags dry with the leaves inside. If you live where it's sunny, you can put them out in the sun in the open air. Where I live, it is not sunny, so I put them in a bowl on my radiator overnight. You can also dry them in your oven, on the lowest setting your oven will go to. But be sure that you watch them very, very carefully. It works, it will dry them out, but you want to dry them, not cook them. So if you use your oven, be super careful, keep your eyes on them. When the leaves have dried, you want to cut as fine an edge as you can. And then empty out the tea leaves and open up your bag so that it's one layer and not a double layer. So that's what a round bag would look sort of like. Here's your plain old, normal, easy to find square bag. They're going to rip. That's the nature of them. Don't worry about it. It adds texture. Make sure you get all the little leaves out. And here's one of the tea infusion bags. Same thing here. I'm going to get a little mess on the corner. But now I have a nice flat piece to work with. Now to make your tea bag fabric. Got my cloth. I've got my tea bag opened up, dried and opened up. Usually when I do this project, I use a big piece of cloth and lots of tea bags. It saves time and energy, but today I'm just going to do this little one and show you what it looks like. Again, if you want to use a PVA, give it a try. I've had pretty good results with the PVA, but I've also had better results with the homemade paste. So please check out that recipe. I've got a link to it in the video, in the text box below the video. It's really cheap, really easy, and it's been used in bookmaking and book arts for centuries. So you really want to saturate a brush with the paste. And you really want to saturate your fabric. That's key. You don't want it just on top of the fabric. You want it in, work it into the fibers so that your glue is, your fabric is saturated with the paste. Now add your tea bag. and just kind of flatten it out. Some tea bags are going to buckle and wrinkle on you. That is the nature of a tea bag. A lot of that's going to brush out, and if it doesn't, go with the texture. So now you're adding another layer or two of your paste, and you're binding, you're making a seal here with the tea bag and the fabric. And that's pretty much it. It's going to take quite a while to dry. Leave it overnight. And then this is what it's going to look like when it's dry. It's going to be flexible, robust, and you can do so many things with it. It's going to hold a crease pretty well if you want to, as we're going to do in a few minutes, make it into a cover for a journal. I've trimmed these mostly, just cutting around the excess fabric. Depending on your fabric, you may be able to tear instead of cut. And again, depending on your fabric, you might like this because when it works, you get some fun frayed edges. That one worked better. So experiment with tearing if you want a little bit of messy, raveled edge. Here is some tea bag fabric that I made on a piece of navy blue linen. This was from a skirt whose waistband just gave up the ghost and could not be mended. So it's not giving you as much pop on the tea bag side, but it does look pretty good. And you could paint on this side or embroider on both sides, turn it into a teeny tiny book cover. So go ahead and experiment with other cloth that you have. Before we start turning our tea bag cloth into art journals, I want to show you an adaptation for making super textured tea bag cloth. It needs time to dry, so let's do it now. I've coated my cloth with the paste, and now I'm going to add a tea bag. And now this time when I start adding the paste, I'm going to wrinkle it up. Like this. And then glue down the wrinkles. You're going to need a lot of extra paste to make those wrinkles, to make the cloth, all these layers fuse together, but they will. That's why it's going to take a long time to dry, because you're going to have a lot of layers of very pasty, wet tea bags. If you don't have an oversized tea bag, try using a bunch of little ones. Okay, just throw them in together, paste them down. I think this might even look better. And now we're going to let those dry. There are so many ways that you can use little pieces of tea bag cloth, but you won't be surprised to hear that today we're going to look at using them in art journals as covers or integrating them into art journals as pages. When you do this, you can leave them natural like this. Most of us are, that's why a lot of us are attracted to this tea-stained, tea-dyed look in the first place. But let's look at a few ways that you can decorate these as well. Give you some options. On this one, I'm going to use, these are going to be, in a few minutes, these are going to turn into teeny tiny baby covers for tiny art journals. I'll be showing you those. But first, let's decorate the cover using a stencil and, that's better, a stencil and some soft pastels. I'm going to kind of activate my surface here with some water. I'm going to spritz a thin layer of water on the tea bag fabric, line up my stencil, and then I'm going to color over it with my soft pastel. And you can see it's not really getting in there. Let's use a little contrast there. It doesn't look like it's getting in there, so you're going to have to help it. And when you start working it in like this, it's going to become part of the tea bag cloth. Like that. So this is going to be one. I'm going to do the same pattern with the other because they're going to be part of the same journal. You can decorate your tea bags for pages or covers or tags or what you will by adding some slow stitching. This is not really a tutorial on slow stitching. If you would like to try this as a way of kind of some textile mark making, go here on YouTube and find many good tutorials on how to do borrow stitching or embroidery. But you can see that it'll show up on both sides and really pop. So think about that with some contrasting colors or what you will. Another way to decorate your piece is with painting. I'm going to show painting using a gouache. It is a water-based paint, but with a heavier body than a watercolor. Acrylic will give a very similar effect. So if you want a lot of pop, use some acrylic or a gouache or a heavier based paint. You can use watercolors, but they're going to be very subtle, so play around with that if that's your look. But let me show you, if you want some pop, how it's going to look with a gouache or acrylic. You can see that has let me build up a lot of layer and texture in a way that a watercolor or an ink just isn't going to let you do. And we'll come back to this after it's dry. This is going to be the first of several art journals I will make using this tea bag fabric. These are made from the oversized tea bags that I order online to make with loose tea. But, you know, if you don't have that, you could always put several small ones glued end to end and make a longer piece. Be resourceful. So I've got my fabric, tea bag cloth, and inside I've just made some pages. These were from a scrap project using onion skins for echo printing. And if you would like to learn how to make echo printed art journals using the onion skins and other techniques, I have an online class that shows you how to do that. So check that out in the link. Because this was pretty long, I've gone ahead and wrapped it around, and now I'm going to put a hole in there. I'm using a crocodile. You could just use a plain old hole punch, or maybe even just a nice big needle. use what you got. I've taken some sari silk, but you could use any kind of ribbon or lace or twine. And now I'm just going to fed it through that hole. Wrap it around a couple of times. And now we have a really charming wraparound cover with a self-tie. Let's use these tiny covers with the decoration from the stencils. I did not know this was going to happen, but when I turned those arch stencils sideways, those look kind of like peacock feathers now, don't they? And if there's one thing I love almost as much as an arch, it is a peacock feather. Good to know. These are going to be my covers for a dos-à-dos journal. Dos-à-dos is French for back to back, and it's a kind of a, well, stay with me and you'll see why it's called a back to back journal, a dos-à-dos. Now, I have torn little scrap papers, just whatever was in the box from offcuts from bigger journal making. I'm going to sew it in using a 3-hole punch, 3-hole stitch. Starting off now with 2 very cute little books, mini books. Yes, the soft pastel is making a lot of itself. It is peeling off. You can try to fix it if you want to using some varnish or fixative or a shot of hairspray. Or you can just let it be messy. That's usually my decision, but you do you. Okay, so I've got the 2 little books, which would be adorable gifts just as they are, but I'm going to make it a dos-à-dos journal by taking them and gluing them back to back. Here's one, and you reverse the sides, reverse the openings. So you don't want them to be the same. You want them to be reversed. Now I'm going to glue these and come right back. I'm using a glue stick. I'm using a lot of a glue stick because it's pretty thick there. I would normally use an acrylic gel medium, but we want to keep things moving. So let's just use the glue stick for now. It's strangely effective. What I'm going to do is clip these and let them dry. It's dry now, and ta-da! It's a little teeny dos-à-dos book. You have your journal on this side, your pages, and then turns around and goes in the other direction. Again, this would make, I'm not sure it's really practical as a book to keep journal entries in, although I would try, but it definitely makes an adorable gift made out of nothing. Now I have this more traditional style miniature art journal with mixed papers. I've made this with found papers and a 3-hole stitch. If you're new to the channel, welcome. But you may also be wondering why I'm not showing how I made this book and sewed it on camera. That's because very recently I did 2 videos showing just that. Just how to make art journals, blank books, simple blank books with found papers and a 3-hole stitch. It's super easy, incredibly fun, it's quick, it's very cheap. And if you'd like to see how it's done, I've linked to those videos in the text box below this one. Instead, why don't we use some of that time to show how I'm going to decorate my pages in this little book with messy papers. I do get asked that a lot. Am I actually meant to work in this? What? I don't know where to start. All right, join me. You'll get it. I'm starting out with a tea bag fabric as a cover. I love how that the tea stain has come through on the other side with the cloth. And I think I'm going to leave it plain because I like, again, that rust, faux rust that the tea leaves made. Inside, I have found papers. Do you remember a few weeks ago when we made this lacy grid out of paper and napkins? Well, I took one of those that I made and cut that up, and I bound it in as a funky page. And here I've got some stiffened paper napkin. I'll talk about that next week. And to go into the book, I have that painted fragment. I also have, remember when I did the wrinkly, smushed up wrinkle tea bags? This is how they look when they're dry. And this is one that I've dried and then trimmed. And so that's going to go in the book. I have a lot of scrap papers. These all came from the scrap box. That's why they're messy and imperfect and torn. This one I just rough tore out of a bird watching magazine. This one came from a gardening magazine. You can get those kinds of magazines you can get so cheap at thrift stores and yard sales. And they make great, fun pages. See, this guy is from the birdwatching magazine. I'm just tearing it out like that. You can cut these and make them perfect on the, but that's not this book. This book is going to have lots of fun and messy pieces like that. And then these are some photographs I took in Italy in January and printed on deli paper. And then again, I rough tore the edges. And here is a flip through of this miniature art journal using a tea bag cloth cover. I added a vintage holy card. If you like images like this, I have a few of these. Again, they're free printables on my website. And I'll link to those if you'd like to go get those and add them to your own pages. Do you remember a few weeks ago when we made mamigami paper from kneaded magazine pages? Well, that's a fragment that I just tore and now I've glued it in. Really looks great in an art journal. And that is the textured tea bag cloth. And I got this in a lot of religious smalls, and it's just a hand embroidered bit of cloth with a tiny medal. So I safety pinned it in there. This is a bit of lace paper that I made while working on paper cloth hybrid experiments. It was not entirely successful, but I couldn't just throw it away, so now it's part of this miniature book. This is just the beginning for this book. I'm going to go through it and keep adding with mark making, with stencils, with collage papers, adding handwritten quotes, and really making it crazy. I might add a lace wrap. Not sure. I always like the way these look better than how they work in real life. They kind of get in the way of actually working your book. But I cannot deny that a lace wrap does look pretty cute on a little book. There you go. If you have any feedback or any questions, please let me know in the comments below, especially if you have any ideas on using this sort of cloth paper hybrid in your own work. Then we can read and compare notes and all be the more creative for it. Please check out the text box below this video, and you're going to find links to some of the supporting videos, such as how to stitch your own blank book and stuff like that. You're also going to find links to the free printables. I leave on Wednesday night for France. I'm going to Lille to La Grande Braderie. It is the biggest flea market in Europe. It's going to be epic, it's going to be crazy, and it's going to be amazing. I've never seen it. I'm so excited. If I can post from the road, I'm going to. But sometimes it's tricky. Stay tuned anyway, because I have a few guest posters lined up to sit in the chair and bring you some fun and fascinating tutorials. Until later, get up and go make something.